Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a continuing discussion on the war in Israel is Len Carter. Len is an investment banker, business consultant, and private investor. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Carter.
I'm so excited to be back with you Wednesday, 6:30, every week, and particularly tonight because we went through a bunch of Jewish holidays and it was tough to fit this program, this podcast in. So the first thing I want to give you again is part of what I owe you for being such Voice of Wisdom guests. I call my program the Voice of Wisdom. I used to do a radio show for years with my wife, Rosie, and I called it the Voice of Wisdom. And we had a great following, and it was very enjoyable. But I used to do it alone. And then one time, Rosie got tired of bringing me coffee and drinks and so forth. So she picked up the phone and started talking. And after that, I hardly ever got a word in edgewise. But she was really the voice of wisdom. And my daughters said, Morty Davis, the voice of wisdom, and Rosie Davis, the real voice of wisdom. So after that, I was played second fiddle. But you're my real voice of wisdom, because your collective knowledge far exceeds anything I could tell you or talk to you about. But the last book, the greatest book I ever could think of, probably the greatest book on happiness you'll ever read. It's called Happiness, right here. Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. And the one message, there's lots of great messages in this book, but the one message I should repeat, I can't give you all the messages in a brief introduction, but the one message that occurs to me is happiness is up to you. Nobody else could make you happy. And if you make up your mind that you're going to be happy, nobody else will make you miserable, believe me. So it's attitudinal. Say, I'm going to be happy. I'm not going to let negatives intrude on that happiness. And, it's if you do that, no matter what happens in life, if you treat it as everything that happens is for the best, and God is with you. So if you're religious, that helps. But you don't necessarily have to be religious. But take it on yourself. Know that you're in charge, and be happy. I love the one where a couple comes to the rabbi for advice. They're having conflicts, and the rabbi listens to the husband, and the husband tells all the things that are wrong, that aggravate him, and what do you call it? So the rabbi says, you're right. So then the wife gives her view, and after she gives a long review of what that situation is, the rabbi says, you're right. So his number one assistant says, Rabbi, that can't be. You told them both they're right, and they had different views and different attitudes. And so the rabbi says to him, you're right too. And in a way that shows the nature of the world and the nature of happiness or unhappiness and so forth. Because indeed the rabbi, when he says they're right, they're both right. From their point of view, they're both right. So the rabbi is right. The husband's right because he knows, how could the rabbi say he's wrong when I know I'm suffering from this marriage, so I know I'm right. And the wife likewise. And for sure the assistant to the rabbi, when he says, Rabbi, you can't be right because you told him both of them are right. And that's the nature of human beings. We can't even agree when we give the same facts. So, just be right for yourself, be happy for yourself, have confidence, and you don't have to win the arguments. The only argument you have to win is that you're going to be happy by providing the happiness and ignoring the negatives in your life. What's his name? Wrote the book. What was that priest? He wrote a great book. It'll come to me. Anyway, that's another thing. As you get to be at my stage of life, the thing that can make you miserable is not recalling things that are at the tip of your tongue. I know it like I know my own name. I guess that these days sometimes I don't even know my own name. Anyway, I don't want to talk any more about happiness because I'll probably make you miserable. But
just don't forget the things that make you happy.
Yeah, Woody Allen says life is made up of the miserable and the horrendous. And he says if you're only miserable, you should be elated. So be happy, choose happiness. In the Torah it says choose life. What do you mean choose life? Of course you're going to choose life, but people don't. They commit suicide. They don't realize how valuable, invaluable life is. What a blessing it is that every day that you get up, you can experience nature, the adventure of life. So go out, walk on the street. There's a song, the best things in life are free. The sun in the morning, the moon at night, the sand on the beach. I can't alliterate all of the great things that are free. But watching your child do something that makes you happy, or having a grandchild, most of us that have grandchildren like me always think, gee, why did I bother having children? I should have just skipped and gone straight to grandchildren. Anyway, I want to get into the subject that's so prevalent right now, and that is the war between Hamas and Israel. Both sides are suffering tremendously. But for some reason, at the universities in the United States, Israel is the vicious devil, as Iran says, that Israel is the Satan, and the United States is the big Satan, the real Satan. So here, the American kids, the university kids, are overwhelmingly supportive of the Hamas that started this whole thing by attacking Israel. Apparently, they prepared for it for months and maybe years, and the first day killed, I think, what was it, 1,400?
12 or 14.
12 or 1,400. They were attacked. So Israel responded by reattacking, it's not called reattacking, by
responding.
By responding with as much violence as they could, trying to overcome all those missiles and shootings that were happening across the border from Gaza. And if these young people knew anything of the history of Gaza, they realize that Israel voluntarily turned over Gaza to the Palestinians in the hope that they could make a great like destination like Singapore or something. And so they did it with a great deal of pain because they had a Jewish population there that had businesses and were doing well, and they refused to leave, you know. So they had to bring in the Israelis had to bring in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, their military, and kick their own people out of Gaza so they could turn this land over to the Palestinians. It was a gesture that they thought, again, every time they made a gesture, and they made a number of gestures to try to bring peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And they've never gotten anything back in return because just like here in Gaza, the payback has been one attack after the other over the years, loss of life, I mean, you know, they can't do right. They returned to Sinai, to Egypt. That one worked out because, fortunately, Sadat, who got a Nobel Prize, came to the Knesset, came to Israel, showed a real willingness to cooperate and make peace with Israel. There's never been one day of war between Israel and Egypt. Maybe the Yom Kippur War, they may have participated. But there's been a marvelous peace for over, I don't know, 60 years or something. And in Lebanon, at one point, they gave back a piece of land that was in dispute because Lebanon said it was theirs and Israel said it was theirs. So Israel turned it back to them. I mean, you know, Israel's tried, and the Arab world hasn't tried. The Palestinians weren't helped to set up a new life. The UN, all the world's major companies, which are part of the UN, in 1948 voted to turn over not a great piece of land, an inferior piece of land, not with a lot of resources. It was more desert than land that was productive. And Israel came in and with their effort and their years of applying their wisdom and their technology, has turned it over into a destination that's amongst the greatest of the small countries. Israel is number 10 in a list of countries that are the happiest in the world. The United States, with all its wealth, that you'd think it would be right up on top, is number 16 last time I looked. The happiest countries, and I mentioned this before, are the Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland. Unbelievably, you know, not necessarily the richest, but they take best care of their people's needs from birth to death, from throughout their lives. They have free college and free universal medical coverage, and so they've provided a kind of happiness. But Israel, with no resources to begin with, and with starting from scratch, has been able to create an exciting country. People that visit it love it. They've changed it from a Muslim country where you couldn't have Christian churches or chapels or anything, or certainly not Jewish synagogues. So let me introduce the genius that I'm lucky enough to get to join me on a regular basis now.
Who? Where?
Len Carter, and let him get a word in edgewise.
So let's talk about that, about the worldview on Israel, and specifically this instance with Hamas. You know, it's not like people in most parts of the world, at least the developed nations in Western Europe and here certainly, there's free press. We have access to information. It's not like people are being told. I mean, there's different propagandas, but there's information out there if you want to find it. You look at what's happening. The other day, the United Nations Secretary says that the October 7th massacre didn't happen in a vacuum. And then you see just recently Turkey's president saying Hamas is not a terrorist organization, they're just liberators. So what is it? Why is it just anti-Semitism? Is it just bad PR on Israel's part? What is it that, it's not like the information, again, is not available. Why does this persist, you think?
Well, in the United States, we believe and we like to think that we make all information available and generally not corrupted by our own desires or views. So if you want to find out the history of Israel, how it got founded, why it got founded, and all the history ever since, why there are these wars, why the Palestinians are still there from 48 when they fled at the urgings of their leaders, saying, excuse me, on the establishment of Israel as a country, as a Jewish nation, which they immediately rejected, even though it was voted by a majority of the world's countries to be a Jewish state. And it wasn't that big a piece of land, it's a very tiny country, nor with any of the immense resources that some of the Arab countries were given, and particularly in terms of oil. Israel had no oil except maybe olive oil. And yet, with all that information, our young people are so, including Jewish people, because young Jewish people are very sympathetic to the underdog, and they feel the Palestinians are underdogs, and they're suffering and so forth. But the reality is that Israel never kicked out the Palestinians. The day it was set up as a state, as a Jewish state by the UN, the Muslims and the Arabs, the Palestinians that were there, were told to leave. The Israelis have no army, we'll get rid of them in no time at all. And then you could come back and not only get your property back, your houses back, but you'll be able to get access to all the Israelis or the inhabitants that are there now. And they took their leaders' advice and they left, they fled. Having fled, they never were integrated into the society. Lebanon still has, from 1948, a camp that was set up for these refugees, immigrants, whatever you call them. Till this day, it's grown enormously because since 48, they have a lot of kids, these Palestinians. I guess there's nothing else for them to do in camps, so they don't have a lot of television for them, or so they do the things that help them get through life in a more upbeat manner. So they make a lot of kids, which is fine. But since 48, that they couldn't absorb and integrate them, and they're their own people. Israel took in, since 48, took in every Jew from throughout the world that was kicked out of, literally kicked out, maybe not kicked out, but driven out by virtue of the fact that they couldn't have synagogues, they couldn't have the means of religion, tefillin and Bibles and so forth. And Israel absorbed them readily and integrated them, and including Russia. Russia, when it was overthrown by the end of the Cold War. At least 1 million Russians, the biggest segment of the Israeli population, and probably the most beneficial and productive, are the ones that came from Russia, because they were very educated, many PhDs and doctors and lawyers and musicians, and they absorbed about, in total, including births, new births, about 8 million Jewish people. And all the Arab countries together, more than 8. The 8 were the ones that fought them and that fought against the ragtag Israeli army. Because when Israel was set up in 48, it had no government, no army, no nothing. And it was a miracle, literally a miracle, that they beat all these countries that decided to mobilize against them, including Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq,
Saudi
Arabia,
and Yemen.
Yemen, and probably contributions from Kuwait and Qatar and maybe probably even Iran. So Israel, had no choice. They asked Ben Gurion, after the Israelis won, the media, the journalists said to Ben Gurion, you must have a secret weapon. How did you beat all those countries? And he said, yeah, we did have a secret weapon. And they said, oh, we know it. What was your secret weapon? He said, Ein Brera, that's Hebrew for no choice. We couldn't back up because we had the ocean behind us and the Muslim, Arab, Palestinians in front of us. Even though it was all these countries, we were able to overcome and win. But when you think of how easy it would have been for these Palestinians to be absorbed by their fellow, where they could, the Jews left those Arab countries, weren't driven out, but were forced to leave because they couldn't practice their free religion. They were abused, so they left. And here they could have left to friendly countries and started new lives if they were just, if those countries would have opened up for them, and they wouldn't have these refugees, these suffering Arabs, Palestinians, which everybody focuses on, but which could have readily been taken care of, particularly since at times Israel said, we'll provide funds, we'll chip in, we'll help them relocate. And all the Arab countries should have put up money to help them relocate, to avoid this festering cancer that are the Palestinians. And in a way, I think it was by choice that they left the Palestinians there, because the Palestinians, as most of us that are familiar with our country and those people know, are the most educated of all the Muslims, particularly because they live in a world that's not so constrictive as Saudi Arabia or these Muslim countries, and mostly educated in Jewish universities, in Israeli universities.
They're more liberal than a lot of the other Arab countries, certainly like Saudi Arabia, right, where they have strict Sharia law and things like that.
More than Afghanistan, they don't let the girls go to school.
Right.
In Israel, the girls can get graduate degrees, go to top schools. So Israel is responsible for their being superior in many respects in terms of their educational status. But these countries are reluctant to take them in because they figure if they're that educated, they'll re-educate our people. They'll insist that the women can go to school.
And it's hard to vet, because there are a lot of terrorist organizations within the population. So if you allow people into your country, it's hard to vet which ones are going to be troublemakers and which ones are going to be okay.
No, but it was such a simple solution. Instead, all these nations, I don't know if you have a list of them, Len, but I don't know if any of them have a map with Israel as a country. Did you ever look that up?
I don't think even there was even UAE that just
United Arab Emirates.
that just was part of the Abraham Accords. While there was a research study project done on the schooling and textbooks and things in UAE, and while they did say that there's been more of an emphasis on tolerance and less anti-Semitism, they don't have Israel on the map.
They don't have,
No, this is Palestine.
on the map there's no Israel.
Right, and that's a country that's is
They're
friendly,
more open, yeah,
friendly.
more open. They've become very friendly with.
I mean,
They get a lot of tourism from Israel. They do a lot of business with Israel. They're a forward-looking country. That's why they're doing so well. They have probably the best airports and airlines. They use the money well, unlike a lot of the other Arab countries that use it for weaponry and for keeping their people down.
But I think it's more than just an underdog desire, support. I mean, certainly Erdogan in Turkey is not saying Hamas is not a terrorist organization because he's like kids on college campus supporting an underdog. I think there's just straight anti-Semitism there, and
Yeah,
no,
but he
no way
himself-
around it. That's just,
He
they're
himself-
not a terrorist organization.
Len, he himself is a radical Muslim in the sense that Turkey voted years ago to be a secular country. And since Erdogan came in and has kept the leadership role, presidency, through popularity, but also through his manipulation of the electoral process, he's definitely been overwhelmingly anti-Israel, although he likes dealing with Israel because he gets benefits in terms of progressive products and learning things that are useful for Turkey. But Turkey's been very biased against Israel. And to the extent that all these countries, by behaving this way, create anti-Semitism throughout the world. Look at the United States now. If these kids, the biggest problem I have with Israel is they've never spent any effort or any significant funds to educate the world that they were set up as a Jewish country. And if they absorbed all of the Muslims and Palestinians who have children at a far greater rate than the Israelis, it would no longer be a Jewish country. And out of the whole world, to give a people like the Jewish people such a small piece of territory and to then make it unavailable to them, despite that it's been signified and that it's designated by the UN. You can't get a better certificate or approval than the UN approval. Even the UN is overwhelmingly biased against Israel. Israel's brought up more than any other country at the UN bias and for civil rights violations. Unbelievably, because there's no other country in the world, to my knowledge, that the minute there's a problem in another country, when there's a tsunami, how do you pronounce it?
Tsunamis?
Tsunami.
Yeah.
A tsunami or a flood or a
Earthquake.
Any
natural disaster.
What's it with a V?
Volcanoes.
Volcano. Every kind of thing, hurricane. Even in the war between Russia and
Ukraine.
Russia and Ukraine, Israel immediately set up and built a number of hospitals to take care of the wounded and the crippled and so. Israel makes all their hospitals available to the Palestinians on an equal basis as they do to the Jewish. One of my grandkids had an accident and he was almost dead. And in the next bed to him was a young Palestinian who was in very big trouble health-wise. And the, what's the name of the hospital?
Hadassah?
Hadassah had to say that top doctors taking care of them. They don't bias, even when there's attacks by terrorists within Israel, and they overcome the terrorists, and the terrorists wound up crippled or maimed or something. The Israelis take them into the hospital and bring them back to good health. There's no other country that deserves plaudits for that. And yet, now the American kids are marching against Israel, against the Jews. It's heartbreaking, because if they realize, the one gripe I said I have against the Israelis is they never spent the money or the effort to teach the evolution of how Israel came about, the good deeds they do throughout the world, the fact that the Palestinians, just like the Jews from the Arab countries, could have been accommodated and lived better lives instead of being what they are now, forced to be rebels in a country that they're taking them in. Israel's the one country in the Middle East that takes in foreigners, in this case Palestinians, but others, as citizens, even though it was appointed, recognized as a Jewish state.
So we saw last week President Biden in the address to the nation saying he was going to deliver a $100+ billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and some other items. At the time,
and aid for the
$7 billion for Taiwan, $100 billion for humanitarian aid, $14 billion for border security, which I think was a throwing of a bone to the Republicans who want more border security. $14 billion in Israel and $60 billion in Ukraine. So the question is, I mean, now that we have a new Speaker of the House, finally.
As of only about 2 hours ago.
So maybe that legislation can come before the House. What do you think? Should it be approved as is? Too much? Too little? Why does it include aid to Taiwan and border security? Should it be broken up into pieces?
Well, like everything else in the American Congress,
it's a trade.
They try to satisfy as many
right.
segments of Congress, and there's different spokesmen for these different countries or different ideologies. So why they're giving so much more to Ukraine than to Israel? That's a good question. And also, Biden talks out of both the sides of his mouth because he says, we're totally behind Israel. They have every right to respond, to defend themselves against an attack. And then he goes on and says, but we should try to end it because we could maybe get a peace settlement and get the hostages back and so forth. So instead of what he said early on, that Israel has a right to go all out because once and for all they should end the attacks on the country, which don't stop every few years. And now they're backing off. I haven't heard him once say that they should halt the attacks by the Ukrainians against the Russians. And the only one that helps is it gets the team or the group or the country that's somewhat losing at the moment to recover and to reinforce and to move into a stronger position. It's hard to believe. Hey, when you're a country and you're attacked, especially by missiles right across from population.
Right. I mean, no country in the world would be asked to cease fire if anything like that happened to them.
How would we feel if the Mexicans or Canadians or some adjacent country started firing satellite missiles, whatever? We wouldn't hold back at all.
But yeah, I don't. The U.S. at least hasn't said there should be a ceasefire. There's some talk of what they're calling humanitarian pause, where they are trying to. But
that's a nice way of saying ceasefire.
But I don't think they're saying. I mean, they're not coming out and saying, as others are, that they should stop. They should open a corridor or allow.
I think Biden has suggested that at some juncture. I said he talks out of both sides of his mouth. He says they have every right to defend themselves, and we encourage them to move ahead aggressively. And the real problem is that's the way they should have behaved and attacked, because in a response to an attack is understood, but they couldn't move forward that quickly because to attack a country like Gaza and Hamas, it's a very tiny country with 2 million people on top of each other. If Israel sent in their army without
it's not just that; it's that they're intentionally using human shields.
Yeah, but also it's
in places where
it's guerrilla warfare, and an army doesn't put you at an edge. In other words, Israel would lose tons and tons of young people, of their military, of the IDF. They've asked 1 million people to leave so they're not attacked. And they got Egypt to open up, which for years has been closed, their gates, so that the Gazian inhabitants could come. So then they'd only have to deal with 1 million instead of 2 million on top of each other. So they had a delay. And the more they delay, the more it hurts them, because you were attacked a few years ago, weeks ago, months ago.
So
why
do you think they aren't waiting? Are they just? Is this part of the plan?
I just told you. They have to wait because they can't go into that the guerrilla warfare where you're fighting every house as your enemy. When there's 2 million people within a very narrow area. There's no advantage in having an army, because your army has to go through all that, and a guy with a gun inside of that house is as good as the most advanced equipment. So there's no advantage for the Israeli army.
So then what's the strategy?
I just told you.
No, you didn't.
There's a million people to leave. So instead of 2 million
That's not the offensive strategy. The offensive
no, that's
strategy is bombing.
To minimize. You can't, if you think Israel is in trouble now, if they, what do they call it? Super bomb, not super, flag bomb, not flag.
Carpet bomb.
Carpet bomb. If they carpet bomb 2 million people using their equipment,
That's not
which
what I'm
they
saying.
could,
That's not what I'm saying.
they can.
That's not what I'm saying.
What do you say?
I'm saying, are they going to continue to do what they're doing, which is missile strikes, and then attack at some point, or never attack?
No,
like you're
they definitely
saying.
plan to attack.
But you just said you
Bibi said,
can't attack because it's guerrilla warfare.
Once they move out these 1 million, Bibi keeps repeating, don't worry, we're on the verge, we're going to do it soon. But they don't want to do it in the face of being so disadvantaged. There's no, you could have the greatest army in the world.
So then why is there bombing going on in the northern half as opposed to just waiting for the million people?
That's one of the reasons to stimulate.
So that's what I just said. So that the strategy is to continue the missile strikes to get the people to force out from the top half to the bottom half.
That's a big difference from, what did you say?
That's not what I said.
What kind of bombing? No.
I didn't say, I said
You gave me the word.
carpet bombing.
Carpet. That's a big difference.
But that's
from
not-
carpet bombing.
But that's not what I'm saying.
No, but
they're
that's
doing.
the two options that they have. Israel has much more power, so that they can use their power and win faster, but they would be abused terribly as they are even now. So they can't do that. They know they can't do that.
So that's what I'm saying, so that the
but you have to get
strategy is
you
to
have to get pressure.
continue the missile strikes,
Do as
to
much
put
as you
pressure
can
so that
against
the
Hamas,
top people,
yeah.
so that the people in the northern half move into the southern half.
Do as
And
much as
then
you can.
a ground offensive, that's what you think.
Do
That's
as much
your
as you
prediction.
can. Do as much as you can to hurt Hamas without going after the total population. Yeah. That makes sense to
When
me.
do you think that'll
And
happen?
he keeps saying, Bibi keeps saying, no, we're not going to stop, but we're going to do it imminently. But it doesn't happen as quickly as they want.
When do you think that'll happen?
I don't know. Bibi doesn't know, because it depends if they move those million people out or some significant part. But one good thing that came out of it is they opened the 4 doors, the borders to Egypt, and Egypt is taken in.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's, I'm not sure if they're bringing in, if they're allowing in people. They did allow 8 out of 12 caravans of
Yeah, they're allowing caravans.
of supplies, but
Yeah,
I'm
but
not sure they're
not-
allowing
not-
people.
Not enough to make a real big difference. But I believe they're letting people. Otherwise, it wouldn't, where would the million people go?
Yeah, I'm,
Check that out. Look, I'm not there, I can't testify.
no, I was looking before, I didn't see, I saw that.
But they've accomplished what, in one way, throughout the world, right now, there's more anti-Semitism and visible anti-Semitism. There's more rallies against Jews.
So what about the U.S.? Does the U.S. try to do something to get its hostages back? We've got, I don't know, 20 hostages of the 200 are Americans, something like that?
No, you can't fight a war just to save your hostages. You know, you got to tell them a war's a war. You're in the war. You know, Israel always the larger cause for the smaller cause. In other words, they don't want to show you how important Israel considers human beings. They traded over the years. The Hamas had captured about 1,100 or something under 1,100 hostages, including members of the army. And they negotiated with Israel. And Israel, to get one guy back, one soldier back, gave him 1,100. To me, that's idiotic, but they want to show how important they consider their soldiers in life.
So how would the U.S. make the same gesture?
No, but I would say, forget the U.S. If it was me, I'd say, well, you don't sacrifice, because for sure, those 1,100 had more killed than one guy since they were returned. And they paid for, and Israel with Lebanon paid for dead bodies, dead Israeli bodies, for live terrorists, live hostages. So, you got to say, you can't say, even though I understand families pushing for it, and it looks so, and you can't do it. It looks very bad, you can't do it. But why save those when it's going to cost more in the long run? War is not a good thing. We have to outlaw wars.
One of the things that I think Biden said in his address last week was to caution, trying to draw an analogy to the U.S.'s reaction to 9/11, where it was a very emotional, anger reaction to 9/11. We gotta do something big, and trying to caution Israel to be thoughtful in what they do, don't do something, but to be thoughtful. What do you think, if any, are the lessons that Israel could learn from the U.S. and its invasion and occupation of both Afghanistan and Iraq following 9/11?
Well, that's a good question, because a good place to start off with. Because when we lost 3,000 people, we mobilized and went after the country.
Right.
And then afterwards killed maybe 20,000 and maybe lost 10,000 Americans, and much blood and treasure and so forth. Israel lost, if you take on a proportion, on an equivalent basis, the size of Israel.
Like 15,
there's 9 million,
something.
And we have 320 million.
Yeah.
So it would be the equivalent of Israel losing approximately, give or take, 50,000 people.
Yep.
And we didn't attack the whole country. We responded to one attack. But it's heartbreaking to see, even today, many big contributors have pulled their support for Harvard and some of the leading institutions that are the biggest areas or rallies against the Jewish people, not only against Hamas and the Israeli army, but the Jewish people throughout the world. And they're being so criticized. We didn't have those kind of rallies after 3,000. We were upset, we were angry. We went to work against Afghanistan. But here, so it's being costly to these universities, and it's very hard, because we're a great believer in free speech. But the real tragedy is how easily it could have been remedied if the Arab countries accommodated their fellow tribesmen, their fellow
Right. I mean, we were looking
The
before,
religion
at the
is-
time,
yeah.
at the time of the creation of Israel, the Arab population was something like 100 million, and the Palestinians in Israel at the time were 700,000, so less than 1% could have been absorbed
Yeah.
in the countries
Terrible.
having 100 million people.
And not only that, they would have got big help from the UN in terms of financial aid, from Israel, hopefully from the other Arab countries, were they to care about those Palestinians. And they didn't. Many, many, many billions more have been spent in Gaza, because every day there's 80% unemployment in Gaza. So they're being fed by the money from the UN and from other contributions. It would have taken no great effort to get rid of that problem. And they just let the problem, what's another word for fester, just to grow, bigger and bigger with every day. And look at what's happening in the U.S. Excuse me. Sadly, there's going to be lives lost in this country from these upheavals against the Jews in the United States, by the students, it's horrible.
You think we'll see some more copycat attacks or other?
Yeah, some of these people are very angry. They think just like Iran says, that Israel is the Satan, the small Satan, and the United States is the great Satan. When you feel that, when you're cutting off the head they're cutting off the head of infants, you're looking at them not like human beings, like cockroaches. You don't feel bad for you, but they're little beautiful infants. I don't know how they could do that. The Nazis used to take infants and throw them up in the air and catch them on their bayonets. It was like a fun thing, when you don't look at them as having any empathy, sympathy, but they're just vicious and evil. They're Satan. You're doing something good when you're doing it. And the Golda Meir said, we'll have peace when the Palestinian mothers love their children more than they hate the Israeli children. And that's true. And they also said, if Israel puts down its guns, if the Palestinians put down their guns, there would be immediate peace. If the Israelis put down their guns, there would be no more Israel. So it's a totally different attitude, But it's sad, these kids are well-meaning, but they don't know. How would they know? They don't know how the state was established. You ask them, how did the Jewish state, the state of Israel, come about? I don't think 10% would know. And how did the Palestinian problem come about? They thought the Israelis drove them out. They never drove them out. They could have stayed. And the ones that stayed were integrated. They can vote at the Israeli elections. They can get the benefits of the social support that the Israeli government gives it to its own people. Not the same. As I said, the Israeli hospitals take in, they're wounded and they're crippled and they're maimed and they're sick. And many of them, look, the son of, I don't know if you saw that, I think I sent it to you. The son of the head of Hamas is critical of his own father. He says that the Hamas is worse than ISIS. And that's as bad as you could say. Because nothing was worse than ISIS. You know, and we felt it was so evil, ISIS, that we had to kill. Where do we stand?
So just about out of time. I think we've covered a lot of ground as we usually do, but still problems remain.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
As much as we
That
can
it
do in an
doesn't have-
hour, but
It doesn't have
it's
to
a
be.
bigger
It's
problem.
heartbreaking. You know, human beings are unlike other species, any other animals. We kill each other. We look to kill each other. We're looking for enemies. You know, we're making China an enemy now, maybe. But if they want Taiwan back, there's some merit. You know, you got to listen to them, maybe. And also, it's better to work things out than to fight over it. That should be our problem, our attitude at the UN and throughout all the disagreement. See if you can work it out instead of fight it out and lose your most valuable young people and you train your young people to kill other young people on the other side that could be best friends and marriage mates even of the people that they're killing. Anyway, we had enough of me, so I want to wish you all a great week. I hope every day of your life is better than the day before till you're 120, and then I'll help you negotiate for more. God bless you, I love you, and I look forward to being with you again next Wednesday at 6:30. And it doesn't cost anything, so invite your friends to join in, and also drop me notes and your wisdom. Thank you so much. And thank you, Len Carter.